Love reptiles? Don't miss this. If you're passionate about reptiles, amphibians, and everything cold-blooded, Reptiles magazine is a must-have. Each issue is packed with expert care tips, stunning photography, and the latest news in the reptile world. Whether you're a seasoned herpetologist or just starting your reptile journey, this magazine has something for you. Subscribe today and stay informed on the best ways to care for your scaly friends. For only $14.99 a year, you can step outside your algorithm and get exposure to things that you wouldn't normally see or learn about. My family reads Reptiles magazine, and you should too. Visit subscribe.reptilesmagazine.com to get started. This is the Expert and the Idiot podcast. If you like the show and you'd like to support us, there's a link to our Patreon in the description below. Some benefits include getting access to new episodes up to a month in advance. There's also links to USARK and USARK Florida. If you're not already a member, please sign up. Enjoy the show. Welcome to episode 53 of The Expert and the Idiot. Today I'm talking to Tony Hurt of Blue Mountain Pythons. And Tony, you have an incredible presence on social media. You know, I'm always you're kind of involved in a lot of the circles that I'm in, so I feel like this is long overdue. And ironically, I just had Bill Stiegel on yesterday. So, and he asked me, he said, have you ever had Tony Hurt on? And I'm like, well, actually, he's my next guest. So it was kind of serendipitous. But thanks for coming on. And why don't you tell me?
Bill's a great guy, isn't he?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, such a great guy. A ton of knowledge. And how close is he to you? Is he close enough to be dangerous?
So he's 300 miles from me.
Okay.
And I just moved out to Odessa 3 years ago. So I've been in the Dallas, Fort Worth area for 25 years before that. And that's where I met Bill long ago when I was into ball pythons and actually got him into ball pythons. And that's where he started. So after I got out of the reptile hobby, Bill stayed in. And, you know, when I finally got back in, I was like, holy shit, Bill, look at you. You went and made a name for yourself. Of course, the hobby had just changed so much. We didn't really have this social media back when, early 2000s, late 90s. We were just starting to learn what we could do with the internet and how it would affect reptiles.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. So when did you get into the hobby, and then when did you get out, and why? And I'd like to hear that story.
Well, you know, it's been a journey for me. I was just always fascinated with snakes. I grew up in Brownfield, Texas, this little town in up between Odessa and Lubbock, probably population 15,000. And my dad was a coach out there, and his students knew I liked snakes. You know, I'm like this 5-year-old kid. And so they would bring him snakes to give to me. And so he'd bring these snakes home. It was usually a garter snake or a hog snake. There was one point, I think I was 6, that he came home with this big a pillowcase with a bull snake that had to be 6 foot long. And I remember its teeth were sticking out of the bag. And I was like, okay, this game just leveled up. So it was just a real fun time for me. I just always wanted a snake. I didn't do very well with them, but that was kind of in that little town at the time, the only way I felt like I could learn about reptiles was just keeping them and watching them, and, you know, just the wonderment of a little kid. But my parents were super supportive, and, you know, Tony, just don't let it go in the house. Of course, you know, I had so many snakes loose in the house that after a while, the folks just didn't even care. Oh, it'll show up sooner or later. But after keeping snakes until I got into high school, uh, I got out of snakes. I felt like I needed to act a little more normal at that point. But then after college, I moved to the DFW area, and I was out one night with a friend of mine, and we got to started talking about snakes. And the next thing you know, we're looking at newspapers and buying all the boas and Burmese pythons we can to start a breeding project. And so that's really when I got into breeding reptiles. And it's just, I'm amazed every day how different it is now. We have this laid out for us in a way that it's almost a cookie cutter experience. If you can talk reptile a little bit and understand what they're telling you, and just keep a good healthy snake with the equipment we have, you could probably be a successful breeder, especially with carpet pythons like I have. You know, it's not a hard species. It just keep them healthy and they'll probably breed for you. But going back to my story, I got into I joined the Arlington Herpetological Society, Arlington, Texas, and that's when I really started meeting some people that were uh, real big in the hobby at a time where there weren't a lot of people in the hobby. Uh, there's a guy that still lives in Arlington, I believe. His name is Stan Brumbeck, and I went over to his house to pick up a 14-foot green Burmese python, and I got a tour of his snake facility, which was in his basement. And it was just a bunch of melamine racks with these drawers, very similar to these nice racks that we see now that are made from animal plastics. But at the time, we didn't have any companies like that. So you had to build this stuff yourself. So it was just real interesting and educational to see how people were keeping. And he had some cages, but he would breed everything from a variety of boas and pythons to a bunch of different colubrids. He had a really big collection. Uh, I bought Brazilian rainbow boas from him, and he was just such a great guy to meet at that point. For example, I bought a Brazilian rainbow baby, and you know those snakes just really thrive. So you can sell them pretty young, 2 or 3 meals, they're ready to go. So uh, I bought this little snake, and I'm driving home with it in this little tub, and I take it out of the tub, trying to get it back in the tub. My inexperienced self shuts the snake in the tub, kill it.
Oh,
So I'm just devastated. I call Stan. You're not going to believe what I did, Stan. I just killed your snake, and I'll never forget what he said. He said, "You have just learned a great lesson." He said, "You'll never do that again, and you'll be a better keeper from having that happen. So come back over, and I'll give you another one, and you keep your head up. It's all a part of the experience." And that advice has stuck with me all these years. And when I have friends in the hobby that have mishaps like that happen, you really have to turn it into a positive experience. What did you do wrong? How could you have changed that situation? And just try to grow from it. We don't grow near as much from our successes as we do our failures. Uh,
yeah, ain't that the truth?
yeah.
And I I remember once that there should be a rule that like every snake keeper should have in their mind: don't handle any snake ever in your car, especially a small one.
Well, there's just so much that can go wrong. So that same guy that I kind of got into this reptile business with at the time, we bought some Kenyan sand boas, really neat little snakes, and he had this little Toyota truck, just 2 seats in the front, and we had this snake out in the car again, and the snake gets loose, and it gets down into the carpet of the car. So it's either like tear your car apart or we'll just have to find it. So,
Yeah.
man, we kept looking for that snake, never could find it. Finally, man, it's dead, it's gone. 3 months later, we find this thing just sitting out, and it had been in the heat of the summer, Dallas parking lots, which can get 110, 115 degrees.
Jeez.
This little Kenyan sambo that was probably 7 inches long survived, no water, just burning his ass off, but probably cooling down pretty good at night, uh, and was as healthy as a horse. So, but yeah, I could do a whole episode on snakes loose in a car.
Oh yeah, I did it when I first got back into snakes. I had a Dumerals boa, and I remember thinking, let me really inspect it in the car or in the truck, and I get in the truck and I open up the container, and she just made a run for it, went right into the dash, started going directly into the dashboard. And it's like, it was like in that moment, and she kind of went in and hooked,
right,
and grabbed on, and like getting her out. Oh man, my heart rate must have been through the roof. Yeah. It's such a bad place, because all of a sudden you realize like there's 14 million hiding spots in a car for these animals.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna tell you one more car story.
Tell me all of them. I don't care.
So I feel like I was one of the first people in the early 2000s to produce an albino super cinnamon. And this was right when I was starting to get out of the hobby. And I kind of skipped over all that, but I was real big into ball pythons. So this was a major accomplishment in the early 2000s. And so I'm going through this divorce, and I grab all my really high end hatchlings, and I'm going to transport them to a friend's house because I can't come over and check on my snakes as much. I'm separating from my wife. I'm just trying to kind of make adjustments to make it work.
Mm.
Well, on this 5-minute drive, there was a hole in the pillowcase. So that one snake, that albino super cinnamon, got out of that bag, crawled into my dash, and this was a Lincoln Navigator. It was probably a year old, plush car. So, damn it, that snake's gone. I'm just hoping I can catch it later. Well, about 3 days later, I start smelling it.
Oh no.
So I'm not going to save that snake, but now the obstacle is how to get the smell out of my car. So I'm talking to everybody I can about how to fix this thing, and I go to these different outfits, and they're spraying all kinds of stuff in my car and doing all these expensive treatments, and it wears off in a few weeks, and then it smells like death again, right? So not only did I lose the snake, but I have this constant reminder. So I did ultimately, and it was very much like there's a Seinfeld episode with this stinky car. Because I went and I got the stuff sprayed back in that car, and I went and traded it in, and I never felt better about walking away from that stinky car because it was just a slap in the face every time. But going back to what I said earlier, I will now not use a pillowcase. I will use snake bags that are purposely sewn at the seams to keep that from happening. Those little things you just don't think about can be devastating.
So when you first got into this whole breeding and everything, what was your primary focus initially? Was it berms and some of the bigger species?
I wanted to breed snakes. Man, I loved them all, and I'd kept a lot of snakes, and I was just like, man, I didn't even know you could breed snakes. This is amazing. So. Going back to this was probably 1995. Me and my buddy Mike, we would just buy if we felt like we could afford it, we'd throw it into our collection. Really didn't have any focus at all. We were successful breeding albino berms, Brazilian rainbow boas. We bred Matlock pythons, which were just kind of a trash snake at the time. We bought an adult breeding pair at the Arlington herpetological meeting for I think $300 for the pair. Man, I wish I still had those snakes. And we bred some boas, and we would just sell those snakes out of the newspaper. And we were living the life. We were living down in downtown Dallas. There's an area called Deep Elm, and it's a real trendy place for young people to go and hang out and party. So we could walk to this area, and I don't know how many nights we would go and party in these bars, and we'd start talking about snakes, and we'd bring people over 3 o'clock in the morning to come buy a snake that we'd produced. A lot of irresponsible behavior going on at that time, but it was a lot of fun and very educational. I always wanted
So
to produce.
instead of it advising against impulse buying, you were almost promoting it.
I was not even really aware. I had no self-awareness. I was at a point in my life that it was all just about have as much fun as I could and do whatever I thought I could do, and I would enjoy it. I was just kind of living life in the fast lane.
How old were you at the time?
I was 25.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just maturing.
Oh, I don't think I really matured till about 35.
Yeah.
No, it's a struggle for us guys. I think we're inherently immature.
Yeah, for sure.
But I ended up getting a job offer and left all the snakes with him. But it was a really fun time and a learning experience. And then probably 8 years after that, I was back in the Arlington area and decided I was going to give this a go again. I bought snakes from some great breeders. I don't know if you've heard Brian Hummel's name, but he lived right down the street from me, and he was really into Brazilian rainbow boas, and he had worked for the Barkers. So he kind of had access to that.
Wow.
And so kind of through that connection, I bought some jungle carpets from Lloyd Lemke that were just amazing snakes that I would breed every year, probably bred them 5 years in a row. And it was so easy because here I'm trying to breed ball pythons at that time. And these snakes I would just keep together. And like if they breed, they breed. If they don't, they don't. I put very little effort into it. But I think one reason, looking back on it, that I was successful is I always cooled them, really cooled those snakes. Just with the window, I'd crack a window and they get cold at night, kind of warm up during the day. But that's proven very successful for me over the years.
And that was with jungles?
That was with jungles, Brazilian rainbow boas, and with ball pythons too. The worst year I ever had with ball pythons was my first year in this building that had a mini split. And so once I moved into that situation, of course I was excited. I had this thermostat that I could set to raise and lower the temperature. It was almost like a helix for the room, very high tech at the time. But I didn't have near as much of a drop because I didn't put a window in this room. So I learned after about a year that this constant temperature in this room was just not conducive to what I feel now was letting those snakes feel the seasons. And that's always something that I try to focus on in my snake room now is we want to feel these seasons change. And I think that's a really good way to keep and very helpful in your breeding too.
So how cold are you getting your animals?
So I've had a lot of fun with that this year. Last year, my snakes were in my bedroom. So I could only get them down to about 65 degrees and not just be miserable myself because I'm having to live in this area with them. But I did have some fans in the back of some cages that I bought from Focus Cube that allowed me to get the diamonds down to the high 50s by just drawing air in from the window into the cage. So we kind of muddled through last season. But this season, I was able to acquire a whole room in my house. And I've really got these snakes cold this year. And so I have two big, you can kind of see these bay windows back there. Well, those windows go all the way to the floor. and I keep those windows wide open all winter long.
Wow.
So we, on that end of the room, we got down to 39. And then the opposite end of the room over here where I am, I think that night we got into about 55. But with my diamond crosses, I have a lot of 50% diamonds in this room. I just kept their heat on all night. And so they would go at night and just kind of hunker down and get on that heat. But they all pulled through. I just got everybody back on food this week. So in my mind, I'm just kind of discovering how cold I can get these snakes. And that's been a struggle for me because I was raised keeping snakes really hot. And I've learned that it's not about keeping them hot. It's really about keeping them cool and having access to a place to go warm up. So, as long as I've done snakes, I'm still learning every day. That's one thing I like about it.
So so the fear in I think most keepers, right, is that if you get them too cold, they're going to get an RI, like something is going to go wrong, right? Now, I'm assuming that when you're doing these temperature cyclings, you're also cycling them off food, right? So this kind of puts them in a different state, right? Do you still encounter respiratory illnesses? What is your hotspot like for the other snakes that you're still providing the hotspot overnight?
So, all those great questions. And Adam, your podcast is so awesome because you are a great interviewer.
Thank you.
And I'm sure people have told you that, but I think if you so desired, you could have some success in any part of business doing interviews. I think you have a natural knack for it. So
thank you, sir.
But yes, I really seasonal feed, and you hear that term thrown around a lot. I don't know if anybody seasonal feeds the same, but so part of that seasonal feeding is we won't feed anybody other than the hatchlings and the yearlings. I'll feed a little bit in the winter, but it's about Thanksgiving. We just shut everybody off. And so everybody gets dumped out. I was just thinking today that I'm about to have to start cleaning cages. I hadn't had to clean a cage in months. And it's been so nice coming here to change water bowls. But it's on here in a couple of weeks because I dropped a lot of food in this room today. So, yes, we get everybody off food. And we just start cooling. And the diamond pythons this year, I've got some 21s. All my diamonds, well, not all of them, but I have a group of 4 that were all hatched in 2021. And this year, I really saw some behavior I hadn't seen before. The females would get in these hide boxes and just not move for weeks. And really what you would kind of think is a brumation, right? Now the males, and keep in mind, I'm taking these males and I'm kind of cycling them through females because I'm trying to get them into breeding mode. But so I'm probably really doing them a disservice by not cooling them properly. Because all those males that were a little sluggish in breeding in December and January now just are lights out. I had one of my breeder male diamonds. I opened his cage, and then there's a cage caddy corner to the female that he'd been breeding, and I opened her cage. And just so happened the doors kind of held each other. And I just sat here for about 10 minutes it took. And he transferred from his cage to her cage and went right in there and started courting her.
Nice.
Yeah, it's just awesome, man.
So you're doing pure diamonds this year?
No.
Damn it, Tony! Could you make me a pure diamond?
Well, give me a little more time, and I've got some diamonds that I think I can really make some spectacular offspring. I'm really focused on kind of selective breeding diamonds for at least what I like. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of something that has lacked a little bit in the diamond hobby is, we've tried to keep lines pure, and I think that's awesome because we've got a good foundation now. But standing on the shoulders of all these guys that have at least got me confident that I can do this. It's scary to get these snakes cold. But actually, Terry Burwell, I don't know if you know him, but he
Yeah.
lived out in the Midland, Odessa area and bred diamonds. And so he was the only one that I think has ever done it out here. And our weather is pretty unique. It gets cold, but the next week it'll be 70. So the
Hmm.
winters are real up and down. But I've listened to podcasts from Terry just over and over again to try to get a better bead on how he did it. But that was one of the reasons that I got into that. I felt like I wanted a little more of a challenge. But I'll be pairing up one pair next season, and it's going to be a pair that I got from Terry. They'll be 4.5 years old, which I think is the minimum age. But they're both maturing really, I think, faster than my crosses do. And they are, it's a different snake for sure. They grow a little faster. Uh, but I think I'm going to pair those. What I'm calling them is undocumented zoo line animals. And Terry acquired the parents that he was told, hey, these are pure, but we can't put anybody's name on it because maybe or maybe not. We don't want anybody to track that story down.
Okay.
I don't know the details of it, but you get around these animals, you can tell they're 100% diamond. Real little rosettes, tons of speckling, and they're really brilliant yellow. Uh, Probably as close to high yellow as you would see over in Australia. So I'm hoping by getting that pair bred to each other, they are siblings, that I can get those to go and really start to push this high yellow diamond that I think is going to be a real desirable look.
Yeah, that excites me because that high yellow Australian diamond look is what I love in a diamond. I'm not crazy about the really dark diamonds. I think that they're beautiful. Don't get me wrong, but man, those super yellow speckled, it looks like I can't even describe it. It's like looking at the universe, right? Like the Milky Way. It's
Right.
just, oh my God. Yeah. That's what I love in a diamond. And you're totally right. They really do. Uh, they really do. They grow faster. I've got jungles. I have a jungle from last year, and I have, two, diamonds from Brandon Wheeler, and they're like twice the size. They're huge. They're just putting on size so fast. It's incredible.
Well, I try to do these real unscientific experiments. And so I have fed some of mine on just rats and some on just mice, and they're all the same size. It's
Hmm.
remarkable how much waste that comes out of a snake. I feel like there's a certain amount that you can feed that animal and it will utilize and grow, and then it's going to get rid of the rest. And when you overfeed, you're really just creating more waste for you. So I think that in my seasonal feeding, I will not only feed less often, but I will really feed smaller meals. Uh, and I think that these snakes will respond really well to that. Just so much less stress on their system, and it's a much more, in my mind, what they would be doing in the wild. Uh, Kind of got on a tangent there, but I'm kind of in this seasonal feed mode where I'm always trying to figure out by just watching the animals what they need at the time. We're getting into spring here, and so if you're watching your animals, you're probably starting to see a lot more feeding response. Uh,
Hmm.
and that's what happens in the spring. And in the summer, especially with diamonds, it's tough on diamonds. I bet you don't find many diamonds out in the wild during the day with in Australia. It's just too hot, man. They remind me of a dog just with its tongue out panting. I had to put an air conditioner in my house in this room so that my temps wouldn't go above 80. I felt like 80 degrees was when everything was hitting the front of the cage, really trying to find a cooler spot than I was offering.
Yeah, and so I'm going to be keeping diamonds outside very soon here. I've set up some vertical like chameleon cages, the 2x4x2 enclosures for chameleons. And I'm going to be putting my 2 females from Brandon Wheeler out in their own separate little kind of grow out enclosures once the weather is consistently fair here. Once it's not going down below 60 at night, or really dipping down, because we're still getting where I'm at in Florida. We have very similar temperature swings to what you just described previously, where we'll go to 84 and then the next day is the high of 68, and we get a front that comes through, right? So I want to try to get to a more stable, warmer place where I can feed them and know that we're not going to have this crazy drop in temperatures. And then once they go out, I don't plan on them coming back inside unless there's a hurricane or, something,
right.
Some
you don't want them
crazy.
To blow away.
Yeah, exactly. No, they're too important to have them blow away, So yeah, I'm really interested to monitor the temperatures during the summer when it's in the 90s and see what the temperature is inside of a cork log that I kind of half bury down in the substrate, see how cool it is there, and if that's going to give them that retreat that they need to a dark, cool, damp area. And then if they want to bask, they can go up to the top of the enclosure where there's going to be sticks and another cork round where it's going to be, who knows how hot, but as hot as they need it, and just really give them that full spectrum of heat, and brought to you by nature.
Well, and just a great way for you to discover the capacity of that snake. I think we're just now kind of getting the balls to go, okay, let's see what they can do. Hell, it gets 100 degrees for probably 30 days in the summer here. And so I'm like, there's no way I would keep these diamonds out there. The nighttime low is probably 85. So I think they would have a real hard time with that. But if you live in an area that, you're not getting over 90 degrees and your nighttime lows are dropping below 80s, I think you could be very successful. But just judging by what I've heard about some climates in Florida, I would really want a place they could get cool. And it's a lot harder to make a cool box than a hot box. But these are all just my opinion. But I think they're able to do more than we actually realize.
Yeah.
Just really smart snakes that have a knack for survival. I'm just amazed how smart these animals are, at least the way that I interpret snake intelligence to be.
Yeah. Well, and so the wild thing is, and Ron St. Pierre has kind of been a mentor for me in regards to keeping animals outside. He's got his boas and his chondros out, and he said that he sees them basking in high 90s, and he'll temp their body temp, up. I can't remember exactly the temperature, but like 90 to 100, and they're just up there soaking it up with the ability to get away from it, right? So it's all about, and there's the pictures of the diamonds out in the wild laying on black rocks out in the sun. Like, you can imagine that's got to be roasting hot, right? So I don't know what it is. If it's just their ability to get away from it, and they're making that choice, kind of trusting the animal to do what's right for them, and it makes me wonder when we have them confined to an enclosure, if it's sort of an unnatural setting. So it's harder for them to make that determination. I don't know.
No, I like that thought, and I've had that thought as well. Is we are confining them to a box, so they are only able to achieve temps that we provide. And I wouldn't. There's probably 20 ways that a diamond python could go cool off in the wild, and he has one way to cool off in your enclosure, and that's just hitting the coolest part of the cage. So, yeah, they're putting a lot of faith in us to provide those certain parameters, whether it be enough heat or enough cool. But I think guys like Ron St. Pierre, which these guys, we're standing on the shoulders of the people that learn from them. I think it's amazing that they are still in the hobby, and just what a passion you must have to do it at the level they do. So I have a lot of respect for those guys, and I think as a hobby, we need to really somewhat honor the people that paved the way, even if they did it wrong. They allowed us to get here, right? But yeah, Adam, I think there's going to be a lot more outdoor keeping, and I think we're going to learn a lot more. Heck, just learning how to monitor the temperatures. You almost have to be an HVAC guy to work with diamond pythons. You really got to know how to manage this stuff. So it's always an opportunity to learn things and grow, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And Jason Patterson, he's a buddy of mine that's over there in Australia and in New South Wales, and he just moved his diamonds out to their outdoor enclosure, and so I'll be really interested to see how he's going to heat them at night, or if he's even going to, or if he's just going to cool them straight down during the cold months. I have a lot of questions for him now that he's actually got his pythons outside. So yeah, it's we can all learn from each other, and there's still, I feel like with diamonds, like you said, they're kind of untapped, where the potential of breeding them for a specific look, we don't even know yet. Like we haven't even gotten that refined with diamonds. And I talked to David Kelly about this, where it's what are we breeding for? Because from what he showed me, you see such a huge variance in their color and pattern just in one clutch.
Well, we haven't begun to see what kind of color and pattern these snakes can produce. I think the next 10 years for diamonds in the United States is going to be huge. I think there's a real move to people not being scared of them, and learning from the mistakes of others. I feel like we have some really good information about diamond syndrome, or keeping diamonds wrong syndrome. But that's what gave me the courage to do it, because I don't want to go spend $1,500 to $2,000 on a snake and kill it. But I was so drawn to the beauty of them. And just that unknown, I feel like it's really a species that we're still learning a lot about. And for me, that was just not. It was so different. I feel like if you'd been breeding lizards or colubrids, then you get into diamonds. Okay, yeah, I'll just do this like a colubrid. You'd probably be a lot more successful than us python guys that just kept everything so hot in the past. It just feels wrong.
Yeah, I want to, ideally I would end up with 2.4. I think, because I want 2 trios in 2 separate enclosures. And I want to do maybe, 8 foot by 8 foot and 6 foot tall, and just, give them all sorts of opportunities to get as hot as they want, and then also cool down as much as they want. Try to give them what I really want to do, even with these smaller enclosures, is I put a whole potted bottle brush, right, which is an Australian tree, in this enclosure, and then I filled the substrate up to cover that pot, so it's 9 inches deep. So I really want to dig down into that and then stick a cork round in there and give them the opportunity to actually go deep into the ground or into the substrate rather, and cool down, during the day.
That's a great idea. Yeah, you've really come up with some different things with your caging too. That piece of tile in your cage, some of your enclosures. Uh, are you heating that tile up? Is there heat underneath it?
Yeah, so I do everything with lighting. So I use the Arcadia T5 bulbs, which give off heat. To a certain, I mean, they kind of heat the enclosure just by themselves. But then I also use what brand is it? Is it Exoterra? Shoot, I wish I had a box sitting around, but I think it's Exoterra. I mostly use the 25 watt bulbs on most of my cages in the snake room, because the snake room gets pretty dang hot during the day. The temperature kind of goes up, and then at night all lights are off and the temperature and everything drops down to about 72 is the low. And so every day I'm trying to think about what is it like in nature, right? The sun comes up, it's cool in the morning. It heats up, to its maximum in the afternoon. And then the temperature starts to drop again as the sun goes down. And so it's this slow up and then down. And that's, in my mind, I'm trying to give them the most natural temperature swings that they can have, instead of having like a constant 88 or 90 degrees. And that's just a slate placemat that you can get them on Walmart. I think it's called Time and Table, TYME. And I'm working with the guy that designed and made my cages to actually make hide boxes that those will fit into, and the basking light is right above that. So on some days it might max out at 86 degrees, and then other days, if it's hotter outside and the inside of the house is hotter, it might go up to 95 degrees. So I'm just trying to give them access to it. And if they don't want it, they have the space to get away from it and cool down somewhere else.
Well, I think it's very innovative. I don't know where you got the idea. Can they get underneath it too?
Yeah, so that's what my cage guy is designing. It'll be a back and two sides, and then he's going to make a top section that will be kind of countersunk into that, a 1/4 inch. And he's going to cut the center out. So there'll be a 1-inch lip around the entire hide. And that placemat will go right on that. And it'll be off the ground 5.5 inches. So they can go in there, with substrate. Who knows how much space they'll have. But I figure I'm going to fill it up almost as much as possible, and then let them kind of dig it out and burrow down into the substrate and make it comfortable and as spacious or as cramped as they want it to be.
Well, and what a great way to just see some different behavior. We may discover that these are some digging dudes. I don't give them that opportunity. I've got all my stuff on these puppy pads because I just like my room to smell good. And those puppy pads absorb that shit smell and that urine. But I like it when people can walk in my house and not tell I have snakes.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, trust me. I hunt for poop. I stick my head in the enclosure, try to see if I can smell anything, but they are sneaky. They'll bury it. It's crazy. They will actually bury their stools. They'll go to the other side of the cage, and I don't know if they root through the substrate and then have a bowel movement and just leave it under there. But I've noticed that with my boas. I don't know if you've seen my stories lately. My Argentine boas just went into smaller 3x2 by 1.5 enclosures, and they're totally burying themselves, completely burying themselves with just the tip of their nose sticking out of the substrate. It's hilarious.
Yeah, that's a great boa too. I did keep and breed those, and I felt like that was a boa that I really had to keep cool. The Colombians and boas weren't like they are now. We didn't have all the morphs, but Argentines just so beautiful and very docile. The ones I've been around.
Yes,
which
docile
probably
and curious.
They're kind of low stress, right? It's kind of like diamonds. They could figure out pretty quick that you're you're not really an enemy. We probably stress them out a little bit, but they're just very bold, and their ability to come up to you and perch during the day. It's just not a reclusive snake at all. And I kind of found my Argentines to be that way.
Yeah, the Argentines, I kind of think of them as like the boa of, or I'm sorry, well, they're sort of the diamond of the boa world is the way I think of them. They're very intelligent, they're very curious, and they're very laid back, right? And like that's for my very limited time keeping diamonds, even as babies, the diamonds are super laid back, and very curious snakes, where they want to come out of their hide and kind of check you out and be like, "Are you food? What's going on here?" Very low stress animal.
Or at least the way we interpret that. But isn't that just a great way to focus on your stuff? It's always been my strategy is to just decrease stress. And
Yeah.
so any interaction, it's always, trying to read the stress element. Uh, and I think you just kind of get, it's something that you can't learn how to do in a book. You just have to be around animals for a long time. It's just one of those things where experience is really your friend. And of course, podcasts like yours, I listen to guys that just have so much experience. And, when they start to talk about observing behavior, it really helps broaden my mind into things that I don't really watch for or hadn't. So it's really all about that stress. And I think as we learn better to control it, then we'll just continue to be more successful with all species.
Yeah. Real quick, the slate placemat. I think I got the idea from that, or for that rather, from a video that Reach Out Reptiles had, where they were like critiquing people's enclosures, and somebody had a shelf in their enclosure, and they just put a slate, a little slice of slate up on that shelf to absorb the heat and kind of give a more natural basking area. And I think I saw that and I was like, okay, what I'm using currently, because I don't have that actual hide box yet, is I just use landscape curbing,
Right.
and that I got from Home Depot, and I just put those in the substrate and then set the placemat on top of it. So that's kind of where I came up with the idea from. And you can get them whatever size you want. You can get them 8x16, 10x16. And then the large ones are like 19x12 or 19x14, something like that.
It looks really good too. It's very pleasing to the eye, which is a win-win,
Yeah, it's aesthetically pleasing and very lightweight too, right? Originally, I was going to like rock supply shops and getting pieces of flagstone and slate. And man, you start putting those in the enclosure and it's like, you start getting a little bit worried about how much weight you're adding onto the enclosure, to this plastic cage. So going back to Argentines, talk to me. I love Argentines. Not a lot of people work with them. So tell me about your experiences with keeping them. How'd you get into Argentines? And then what was it like breeding them? Because getting them cool is something I've had going through my mind too, because you look at some of the temperature data on like iNaturalist for where Argentine boas are, and they seem to have like pretty big swings where it gets hot and it gets cool there.
Well, I'm not going to have a lot of good information for you because this was a long time ago. And I bought a pair of Argentines at that Arlington Herpetological Society. And they were adult breeding pair that was proven. So I just kind of luckily kept them in a room in the house that got really cool. And I had them for probably 6 months. And the next thing I know, the female's gravid.
Wow.
So there wasn't a lot of expertise on my part. But those babies were just the most beautiful animals. I do remember that I fed that female all the way until she laid. And I think
wow.
she was a little underfed when I got her, but I just kept feeding her because I didn't know any better. I'm just, it was really kind of comical. But I really was fond of that species. I took that whole clutch and those two adults, and I traded them for D'Albert's pythons. Uh, so my experience with them was short, but it was very pleasant. And I remember as I bred other boas, I wasn't able to be successful keeping them as cool.
Okay.
So that
How
always
cool
stood
did they
out to
get?
me. I was keeping them like jungles, where they would get down 70 degrees, sometimes lower than that at night. Again, just cracking the window. So whatever nature dictates, but then during the day, it would warm back up. Uh, and I tried to keep an albino. I'm sure it was just a straight up Colombian like that. And that snake ended up getting sick.
Mm. Now, do you think that could have possibly have been like an underlying condition, or do you think that it was just too cold for that snake?
I don't really know. I don't. My thought was that it got sick after being exposed to those temps. So, and it was a small baby, but who knows? I could have been not having adequate heat. I was, this was when you would do heat pads, and then you'd plug them into a dimmer switch. So you would try to get a thermostat probe down and try to get on that heat pad and get an accurate reading of the temp, but it was very unprecise.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this room that I'm in right now, I actually have a space heater in here. So if there's like a winter night where it's going to get really cool, that thing kicks on. It makes sure that the room doesn't go below like 71 or whatever. But then I just built my Great Wall of Australia, and so that's where all the jungles and the spotted pythons are. And that room, that area is going to be able to dip a little bit cooler at night. So during the cooling period, hopefully it'll get down low enough to where it'll kind of trigger that encourage them to start breeding.
Yeah, I think it's about feeling the seasons, Adam. With most species, is they just got to know when those seasons change, and then most of these snakes are going to breed late fall, winter, and then have babies in the spring, and so their lives are dictated by these seasons. So that's always my objective is we got to feel it, and I've just had real good success just cracking a window. People ask me, how much are you lowering your temps, and I think the more that I don't really focus on that and just you're going to have heat during the day and you'll get as cold as this room lets you get at night, then you'll be okay. And of course, that's with these diamonds. I wouldn't do that with Argentines, but hell, you may be able to. I don't know if anybody's ever tried it, but I just think it's really fun getting snakes cold, kind of because it feels wrong, but it's just I have to come in here and clean with a jacket and a beanie on, and I just think that is so cool.
Yeah, that's really wild. So yesterday when I was talking to Bill, he said that you were a mentor to him, and then you had left the hobby and came back, and then he was a mentor to you. So can you kind of walk me through your relationship with Bill and how that worked, where you were the mentor and then he was the mentor?
Well, when I guess it was about 1999, I got back into reptiles big time. I'd been married for a few years. Both my wife and I had good jobs. I had a little boy that was about 5, Joe, and we had recently bought our first house. And I don't know where the conversation came up, but I'm sure I overheard somebody talking about breeding snakes, and the next thing you know, like Tony will do, is I'm getting in, and I started buying these adult female balls off Craigslist, reptile shows, and I bought a pastel male ball python. And I did have like my jungles and the Brazilian rainbows before that. But once I got that ball python project going, I bought a pastel male for $1,000 from Nerd. Man, it was sharp. It was just the most bright snake, so impressive. We hadn't seen stuff like this, so we were just in awe. Well, the first year that I bred him, he was probably a year and a half. I was super successful, 4 or 5 big clutches, and all the snakes sold for more than I bought that one for. So I'm selling males for about 1,500 and females for 2 to 2,500. And
Wow.
I know I'm like, man, this ball python game is real, right? So now I got this money. I go get investors, and before you know it, I had spider balls, 10 grand, a platinum, 25 grand, a pinstripe, I think was 12 grand. We were just dropping money, and I'm still collecting these adult female ball pythons. Uh, I built this whole garage into a snake room. And it wasn't long after that I met Bill. And of course, Bill just kind of like me, once you really got his attention and he's interested in it, he was just hyper focused. And so he was excited that his son Ryan wanted a snake. And so they got a ball python. And of course, Bill wants to learn all about it. Well, in the process of that, we're talking about this, what snake breeding phenomenon that was going on at the time. That's about when Animal Plastics was cranking out these CB70 racks. The hobby was really growing. Just things were changing fast. So probably 2 years after that, Bill's got a room converted at his house, and I've got my stuff at my house, and we had some projects that we were in together. One of the coolest things is we bought a Jaguar back in like 2001 at Daytona. And man, there weren't many Jags. I mean, you'd see that snake and you're used to seeing jungle carpets. And it was like, man, this is the holy grail. It's like the pattern's reversed, and they're just a super impressive animal. Well, we acquired that snake, and I got out of the hobby a few years after that. Well, Bill had gone on and really been super successful with that animal and made some just outstanding Jags and zebra Jags, and just couldn't have been, I don't think it could have worked out better. And I think that was the catalyst that really got him into green tree pythons. Man, my stint in that hobby was, man, it was full of joy and just for the love of the snake, but also for the love of the game. And a few years after that, I started doing it full time. Quit doing physical therapy. I'm going to just take care of these snakes, go do a bunch of shows. And instead of enjoying my snakes, I was either going to buy food, shipping, posting ads, cleaning. It really was a whole different environment. And I wasn't aware of it at the time, but the less I was able to just appreciate the animals and just focusing on almost farming these animals, it really took a lot of the joy away from it for me. So that combined with the divorce, I got out, and I really didn't want anything to do with it. And divorce is hard. I hope you never have to experience that. But when my kids got, my youngest was a junior, and she was really getting independent. And quite frankly, I needed something to take care of. So I decided I'm going to get back into snakes. And I always loved carpet pythons. And as I kind of studied through getting onto Facebook and Instagram, which I didn't even know all this stuff existed. When I was out of the hobby, I was out, zero awareness. And then I saw Bill. Hell, Bill's still in it, man, and he's kicking ass. And so I called him, and he's just telling me about all the stuff that's transpired. And we really didn't talk much after that, but I decided to get into diamond crosses, because way back when at Stan Grumpek's house, he pulled out this 10-foot diamond cross with the jungle that I swear had X's down its back. And I've never seen a pattern like that again. And that snake I was on a waiting list for years, and I never got one of those babies. But that snake stuck in my mind, so that's what prompted me to go with the cross route. And then, of course, after I'm doing this for a few years and kind of starting to learn just how this all the hobby works, and so then I started talking to Bill a little bit more. And quite frankly, I just started watching Bill. Uh, a lot of times you can learn more from people from just watching than asking any question, right? Just how do they do it? Well, he's one of the friendliest people in the world. So that's just an ability he was born with. And I'm like, well, heck, I can do that. I grew up not having snake friends, nobody to share my snake passion with. And now we have the opportunity to get on here and talk snakes with this 1% of 1% that like these crazy animals. Hell yeah, I like you. I don't even know you, because we have this common bond, which is our appreciation and love for the species. And as we learn more about them, man, that just grows. So as far as just Bill being a mentor to me, he does things in a way that he's just a good lead by example, good character. And I think a lot of us, if we want to accomplish something, for me, what I would like to accomplish is I want to bring goodwill to this hobby, which I think will be great for it. I want to lead by example. I'm in a unique situation. I got a small collection. I don't have to sell a lot of snakes to keep this going, but I really want to promote what I'm doing so the people that buy my animals can then sell their snakes, right? And it was such a new thing when I started that there wasn't really anybody doing it. But I just feel from the experience I've had that we're going to see a lot more kind of small hobbyists with high-end collections, just really focusing on one thing, which to me is going to end up, we're going to have some really outstanding animals to look at.
Yeah, for sure. It's, I'm not focused. I'm kind of all over the place, but I think the things that I do have, I'm trying to be as dialed in as possible, and as focused on as possible, and try to get the highest end or the best representation of that animal, and also like have a good relationship with the people that produce the animals, so if I'm getting my spotted pythons from Ryan Young, like I've it's like, Ryan Young, you know what you're getting, right? If you're getting a spotted python from him, I just got a pair from him, and he told me, he was like, hey, that, this male's not on frozen thawed yet, and I'm not gonna send it to you until it is, and I was totally okay with that. But that's like a guarantee that I know that snake is going to eat frozen thawed when I get it, and so having those relationships with really good breeders and people, and then you kind of have people that you can rely on and reach out to for guidance and assistance, as time goes on.
And when you associate yourself with successful people, it really helps you be more successful in so many ways. I mean, you learn from them, and have an appreciation for what they do and how they do it, and that helps you mold the way you're going to do it. So I think it's really in our best interest to raise the bar for the way you conduct yourself and the way you represent your animals in the hobby, so that people are encouraged to go get animals from you, not only because they love your animals, but they want to have that connection. They want you to guide them. It's just, I could not appreciate this hobby anymore. It really is one of the great loves of my life.
Yeah, it's such a great place to be in, right? Where we are right now for social media and all of its many, many flaws, you can thankfully kind of pick and choose what you want to take out of it, and I think that as reptile keepers, it's such a great community, where everybody's kind of friends, and kind of, everybody sort of knows somebody else, you know?
Yeah. And I think what we got to make sure and do is just make sure it's inviting for people that are new, because it's very intimidating. The learning curve with snakes is fast. You can not know shit and be able to carry on a pretty good conversation in 6 months. So, these new people get on and then they start to kind of say things that they probably shouldn't because they just don't know. But, I think we need to show people how to get in the hobby, how to conduct themselves to a certain extent. And we're all different. And that's what makes, all this so great is we all have something different to offer. But I do think a real important part of this being successful is we've got to be inviting to the new people.
So do you, the people that are buying from you, primarily, are they looking for pets? Are they looking for breeding projects, or is it kind of a combination that you're getting?
I have been amazed at the increased amount of people that just want to buy a snake as a display animal. I had two people in 2024 that had never owned a snake and bought one of my animals as their first. And it initially I was kind of thrown back by that. But then I decided I was going to take that on as a challenge. And so I was able to, I think they both bought Jags too. But we started at square one, and I said, if you'll do exactly what I tell you to do, you'll be successful. And, they've had a great experience. And boy, does that not make me feel good, right? If you're ever able to show someone or introduce somebody to this hobby, man, that's a big responsibility. And then so once you do a good job, hell, that's kind of the key to all of it. I want to see a lot more people doing what we're doing, just so we can see. Well, one, we need more strength. We need more dollars behind us in U.S. art to help protect what we have. But we also want to have a foothold in the pet community. I think snakes are very practical. You don't have to do it on this level, but I would love for people to think snake first when they're getting a pet for their kid, because I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So how available are you to people that get snakes from you? Are you always there as sort of a resource, and do you have any examples of situations that you've had to guide a customer through?
I found that taking pictures of enclosures. So I still have the enclosures that I started in, which, when you get a small little carpet, if you don't have a rack system, a shoebox works great. A shoebox big enough to put a hot pad on one side, you're controlling it with the thermostat. You just put a bunch of cover in there with a good water bowl and some branches. Easy peasy. All you got to do is change the water, clean the tub. So I would take some pictures of things like that and send it over, and he'd go, okay, I can do that. He'd go set it up, send me a picture. We kind of critique what he had done. And, just kind of helping him understand that, it's real simple. Just don't cook it, right? And if you don't cook your snake, the chance of it surviving really goes up. But they've all just done, or this one individual even started to think of some new ideas with perching and the way to kind of zip tie some sticks and branches together to get this snake to display. And I thought that was the coolest thing. But, he was the guy I'm talking about was a real smart guy, very well educated. And so, that not everybody needs to start with a carpet, but this guy was equipped. But we did communicate a lot with pictures. And I do have kind of a time during my day from about 4:30 to 6 that I work in my snake room. So if anybody wants to call and talk about snakes, I'm available then. And if not, if it's after that, I'm usually going to text.
Right on. So how many animals do you have in your collection right now?
I don't keep a hard count, but I think probably about 14 that are just
Okay.
mainstays in my collection. I probably have 25 in my room right now that are either sold, waiting to go out, or just stuff I'm hanging on to watch for a little while.
And is that kind of your, from having like your own devoted facility where you had a ton of animals to the point where it was like a full-time job, and from what it sounded like, it gets to the point where it's almost maybe not overwhelming, but you're not enjoying it as much, right? Because it's so much work. Going from that end of the spectrum to where you are now, do you think that you're just going to stay where you're at now? Is this your happy place?
I'm going to try to. I'm in the process of really trying to get all new caging from Focus Cube. So each year I'll buy a few. But I'd really like to work on my caging for the next couple of years. But one thing you'll find out when you start to produce animals is, you got to hold stuff back. And, you're picking, the picks of the clutch, and, you're holding stuff back from different clutches. So your collection can grow so fast. But yes, Adam, I'd love to just kind of let, as new snakes get older, maybe send the older snakes to friends. And I've done some of that, with Jeff, and there's a few other guys that I'll send older animals to, just to go live their life. But yeah, I think that this is about the right amount, unless my schedule changes. I just started a new career selling insurance about 2 years ago, and so that's been a challenge for me. I try to commit about 10 hours a week to my reptiles as my goal. But one of the new things I enjoy, and it seems kind of corny, but I found out that I really enjoy just coming in here and sitting down and don't do any work. You just sit down and just look around, and just kind of be in the room with the animals. And it's really been a lot of fun seeing them act in ways that I haven't really noticed before. And it may be just adjusting the position, but things you don't see if you don't just sit there and stare, right?
Yeah. And when you do that, do you ever just take a snake out and hold them, and it does that add to the enjoyment?
I'm becoming less and less of a snake handler. Uh, the other day, I picked up an animal and was carrying it over to the tub and to clean the enclosure. And I kind of jerked, and the snake jerked and kind of struck at me. Well, I flinched like a little schoolgirl. And I sat there and just laughed at myself, because there was a time that I would let any snake bite me, and it didn't matter. But, that's a fight or flight thing. And so the more you get bit, the less you care about getting bit. You can kind of train yourself not to do that. But obviously, I've lost that ability because I was not impressive. But I'll handle when people come over and I'm trying to show the animals off. But no, or to take photos, I'll handle. But no, I don't really find that part of my enjoyment. I look at it more as kind of like a fish. I just want to observe and just try to stay out of their way. I've always been somewhat paranoid. If I over domesticate an animal, it's going to be less likely to breed for me. And I'm a snake breeder. I really enjoy breeding these animals.
Do you do any kind of shows or anything like that?
No, I doubt I'll ever will. I've done a lot of shows, and it's a lot of fun and a great way to meet people. Man, you could really get into just getting into the groups that are out there. Those people have a lot of fun doing those shows. I think a lot of them don't do it for the money. I think they do it because they just love that family. But for me and in my life right now, I don't want to commit the time to doing that, and I really don't want to.
Yeah.
Just biosecurity. I don't want to expose my animals.
Hmm. So what are some of your concerns with biosecurity, and how do you ensure the safety and well-being of your animals?
My strategy is prevention. So I decided, because way back when, and I was doing all those ball pythons, there was probably a snake every week I was giving a shot to, and I didn't know why, but that's just how we treated it. Some would get better. I can tell you they didn't once they would show signs like that of any kind of respiratory distress, they weren't as good a breeder, especially if it was a female. But who knows? It could have been any of these viruses that are going around. But at the time, that was what at least I did, or the group that I was in. You didn't take these snakes to the vet. You just tried to treat yourself. I remember building a.
How many ball pythons did you have at a time? And then if you were giving them a shot, how are you getting the antibiotics to give them a shot without taking them to the vet?
That's a good question. I cannot divulge my source on the antibiotic. Yeah, I don't want him to lose his license.
But, okay, no big deal.
I probably got up to 100 to 125 adult females.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot. And I think it's probably easier now because we just have better equipment and resources. I was having to drive to pick up my rodents every week. And a rodent getting out in your car is just as bad as a snake getting out in your car. And they can die and create a smell too. I had that happen as well. Yeah, I got pulled over one time after I left Big Cheese. And when I pulled over, I hit a curb, and there was this bucket of fuzzy rats and then a bucket of hopper mice in my front seat. And so hit that curb, that popped up, and these mice and rats were all over the car. The cop walks up and looks in, and he's like, you got bigger things to worry about than running that stop sign. And so he just left, and then I sat there and tried to catch those things probably for an hour. But there were a few I didn't catch, and yeah, that truck smelled real bad for a long time.
Oh no. You do you still use Big Cheese?
No, I'm really a big fan of Cold Blooded Cafe.
Okay.
And I just got a box this last week, and man, it just couldn't be packaged better. The rodents are all just packaged well in their containers. It's very fresh, and they don't smell. And I like rodents that don't smell bad.
Yeah. That I mean, honestly, I just recently tried out Big Cheese within the past couple months, and I was very pleased with them too. Just their packaging, like it's pretty wild how uniform the rodents are. I don't even know how they do that. Like they tuck the tail and they're all like sitting like they're mummies essentially, and they put them in these vacuum bags and they just vacuum seal them. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I bought from Big Cheese for a long time, but I would buy live. Of course, when you're doing ball pythons, it's a big advantage to have access to live rodents. And we just fed the shit out of them. I'd go spend, at the time it was like $300 a week. I'm sure it'd be $1,000 a week now.
Wow. So when you were treating these ball pythons, do you think it was a husbandry issue, or do you think it was serpentovirus?
No, I think there was underlying virus in these animals, and absolutely no biosecurity. I would bring these animals in; they're going right into a rack. Hell, sometimes I'd bring them in, and they'd go right into the breeding project. So wow. It was moving really fast. The way that I operate now is not even in the same ballpark as the looseness that I used to have. But the kind of the thought was, with the way these morphs were coming out, and if you bought in at a certain level, like say you paid $10,000 for a spider ball, you really needed to produce spider balls quickly, because the longer it took you to breed spider balls, the less they were going to be worth. So, yeah, that as I sit here and reminisce with you, it reminds me of why I didn't like it, because the person that I am today, and the way I treat my animals and this hobby is not even close to that. It's all in my mind very well thought.
So what are some of the biggest changes that you've gone through?
Well, less is more, and when you have one snake, you realize real quick that you can have two snakes. and it's not much more trouble. And then you get 3 snakes. Oh man, it's no big deal. Well, I think there's a point at about 8 that it becomes more trouble. You've got more things to monitor. It's just any live animals, you're always going to deal with stuff, right? And if everything goes great, then you can really keep up with what you're doing. But it's when you have issues. If you get a sick snake, there's nothing that derails an enjoyment of the hobby like a sick snake. Uh, so I knew I wanted to keep it small, and I thought, because I'm not in a huge hurry, I will just make sure that when I buy snakes, I'm gonna buy a hatchling. And I've yet to do anything other than that, and I will quarantine that hatchling. I don't do any testing of my animals, and I've done some testing in the past, and maybe things have changed, but I really felt like if that animal was showing symptoms, it's going to test positive for whatever it might be. And if it's not showing symptoms, it may not test positive. And so I've never really felt confident in at 100% with testing. So my form of biosecurity is I'm going to try to limit the number of people that I buy from, and then limit the number of animals I bring in. So eventually build my own collection, and then really just try to buy hatchlings as soon as they're established. And it's been so far so good. It's served me well.
So what does quarantine look like for you? How do you quarantine an animal? What's the duration? And how far separated are they from the other established animals in your collection?
I have a closet that's probably 25 feet away in another room that I will keep these a hatchling in a shoebox rack. 60 days is usually my focus on that, and I've never seen anything that prompted me to want to increase that time. But again, it's all captive bred. I'm very comfortable with the person that I have bought the animal from, and I brought it in as a hatchling.
Okay.
And it's just been easy. I mean, I haven't had a problem yet. My first hiccup was this year. So I produced a clutch in 2021 that I kept 2 animals from, and they're both caramel, and they're both 50% diamond, and then one's a zebra jag, and the other's just a zebra. I've been raising these girls, just couldn't wait until I could breed these animals. This year, I discovered that one of those females was a male, right? And I have been so prideful in the fact that I have not sent out an animal missex, and I have a little procedure that I go through to guarantee that. But I sure sold myself the wrong sex, so that's kind of derailed me a little bit. And so I probably need to change those procedures a little bit. But I'm kind of thinking that when I pulled those animals out as keepers, I probably vetted them less after that. It's the only thing I can think of, because I'll usually sex every animal 3 times that doesn't sex as a male. I feel pretty confident if I see a hemipene, then I've got that sexed correctly. But for some reason, I've grown this girl up much bigger than she would be if it was a boy. So, you can plan all you want, but you've got to make sure that your snakes are sexed correctly. Sage advice.
And are you popping or probing?
I pop. They're real easy to pop. You do have to kind of practice a little bit. I would encourage you, if you hadn't, just to try to pop your animals, because you need to know how to do that at some point. I way back in my snake days, I'm proud to claim that I ordered 1,000 baby ball pythons at one time. And
Holy
it's
crap.
I'll never do it again. But one thing that came out of that is I really learned how to pop a snake. Uh, and so after you do it that many times, you just feel like you got a pretty good handle on it. But carpets are pretty easy, but there's just every once in a while you'll find one that is a little problematic. I don't really
Mm.
like to probe hatchlings. Once they get to about a year and a half, I find them much easier to probe.
Okay. So when do you graduate your babies from rack into an enclosure?
That's a good question. About a year and a half.
Okay.
Uh, and I've kind of enjoyed watching these animals, and after I transfer them from a tub, how long it takes them to come out and perch. And with the diamond crosses, it's about 2 weeks that snake will stay reclused into a hide. It's got heat in that hide as well, but at about 2 weeks, they'll start coming out late in the day and staying perched. Uh, and I think it's important for those snakes to kind of acclimate to being exposed like that. The tub works great, but I want display animals. There's nothing I enjoy more than walking in here and the snake's displayed in a way that I have to stop and take a picture of it. Just really enjoyable. So I want to try to acclimate them to that early, but it is interesting that they kind of have this little cycle that it takes them to warm up to the environment.
Yeah, I just moved 3 of my jungles into enclosures, and it's so much better to be able to see them now. And now they have the ability to go and perch, a foot and a half up, or go hide and hide, and being able to feed them in their enclosure while they're perched is very rewarding. Seeing them eat while hanging upside down is super cool. So yeah, it's so awesome being able to experience that behavior.
Oh yeah, it's so cool. And it's kind of a shame to keep them in a tub, but I feel like the stress factor overweighs your enjoyment in a display situation for young animals. These guys in these tubs just really thrive. But I have some people that bought snakes this year and just couldn't wait. And so 8 to 9 months, they're putting in pretty good size enclosures and having good success with them.
Nice. Yeah. And it makes you wonder too, if, like they do well in the tubs, but at the same time, you can't see what they're doing either, and I ran into a issue here recently, where one of my jungles that was going to move into an enclosure, but has not now, who's in quarantine, has a little bit of some trauma to his mouth and a infection. And I don't know if he was pushing. I don't know what the problem was. I don't know if it was he was in shed and I missed it in the tub, which doesn't have great, air circulation, so it's a bigger guessing game, I feel like, compared to if he was in an enclosure, I'd be able to gauge what his normal behavior is.
Yeah. Yeah. And he may just be a real high stress animal that, in my experience, most of those things happen when a snake's trying to get out. And they'll find the littlest hole. Sometimes they'll push into air holes. And so if your air holes are too big, they can damage themselves. That's why it's really important that our caging is really free of sharp objects internally, especially around the seams, because they will push. I've got breeder males that I'm like, dude, chill out. But they will just they know where those doors are, and they'll push into those doors, and they're flexible through that snout area, but it's easy to get it. If you push too long, you can get cut.
Yeah, for sure.
So how are you treating that?
For right now, I'm just observing. I talked to Ish Quinonez, who's kind of he's like always the first guy I hit up, just because he's so he's such a germaphobe, and right. he takes biosecurity so seriously, and he's got his background in animal medicine. so I hit him up and sent him some pictures, and he said, just, kind of observe it. But I'm also going to have him, tested, just to rule out any potential Nido or Serpento, just because, in my mind, I'm after talking to Bill, I'm a little concerned that, okay, if he was in shed, I get it, but, is he really stressed out? Was he pushing? I don't know. I don't know the answers to these questions. And luckily he's still in quarantine. So, why not just get the swab and swab them and ship it out and, know for sure and have the peace of mind,
Yeah. Well, with anything, the more information we have, the better we can assess the situation. But yeah, I think Ish is such a great resource on stuff like that. I lost a snake years ago that got bit by a rat in the lip and just had the tiniest little cut, and it was a big boa, and that snake ended up dying in that little bite.
From that small of an issue?
Yeah, got infected quickly.
Oh man. Well, now God dang it, Tony. Now you got me worried.
No, I wouldn't be worried. I think that it's probably a high stress snake. I would try to put more, what I love to use are these, it's like a paper towel tube, after you've used all your towels, and I'll cut those things in halves or in thirds. And if I have a stressed snake, I'll just fill that tub with those things. And they really kind of calm them down. And instead of leaving them wide and open, kind of squish them down. But I've had snakes that would do things like that, from just going from a 6 quart to a 15 quart, just stressing out. Who knows? They don't communicate as well as I'd like them to. But
yeah, it's sometimes you wish that they could, shoot you a text or tell you how they're feeling. Because I mean, and that's my thing too. It tears my heart out because I'm trying to give the highest level of care to my animals and do right by them. And that it's partially why I have the racks and tubs, is trying to give them a nice, secure environment where they can feel safe. Until they get older and they've had several meals and in my care, just alone, because we all know that just shipping alone can stress them out to no end. And so, yeah, I'm hoping he pulls through, and I don't know either if maybe when I fed him, when he was opaque, if he bit the tongs and, caused some trauma there. There's so many unknowns.
That would be fluky, but I guess that's possible as well. But I bet you're going to be fine. If it's big enough, he'll go into another shed. But I'd still feed him, I wouldn't overfeed him, but I'd keep some food in his belly. But when I've had situations like that snake usually goes into another shed cycle about 2 or 3 weeks later.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of a weird thing too, is he shed that skin, that he had been kind of waiting to shed. And then it seems like he kind of put himself into another shed cycle already.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know if he's just really stressed out. I don't know what's I'm trying to figure out.
And so that's common. When a snake is stressed like that shed cycle is a good thing. You just want to make sure they've got plenty of heat and little food in their belly. But the shed cycle itself it's got to be stressful, because my animals utilize the heat more during a shed cycle than any other time. And yep. It's not even close. But no, all that sounds normal, and he's strong enough to do that, so that's a good thing. But I think it's good that you're learning, because you'll be a lot smarter about getting a bite or an abrasion like that. But it's probably going to be no big deal. These snakes are tough.
Yeah, that's why I like the jungles so much. I mean, I got my first one from Nick, and god dang, she's just like tough as nails. She doesn't put up with anything from me. I mean, if I touch her, she does like a full body flinch, and she'll whack her head into me and, you know, kind of do like a faux bite, you know, where she'll let me know what's coming next if I keep messing around. But yeah,
I've got
I
one
mean,
like that too. And, you know, I don't enjoy snakes like that as much, but, you know, it does make you appreciate the ones that are a little less stressed, right?
yeah, I don't know if she's stressed. Cause I mean, I could literally take her out and just, you know, have like hold her while I'm cleaning her cage, and she could, you know, swing at my face and do all this other stuff and put her right back in and feed her 2 seconds later, you know? So it doesn't affect her feed response or anything. She is just a very spunky snake, you know?
Right. Well, it's fight or flight. So she's fighting. And that's why when you get a snake that it's kind of running from you, you can generally pick it up and it's not going to bite you. You know, just kind of
what do you like better? Do you like the fighters or the runners?
You know, I don't really have a problem with any of that. And I think it's interesting that people breed for those behaviors. And I definitely think in species like green tree pythons, it's more appropriate to do that. But with carpet pythons, they're really not hard to feed. I did have a hard time getting my clutch this year going. I had a clutch of 75% diamond jungles. And, you know, these things are just harder than they should have been. And I'm trying to start them on frozen thawed fuzzy mice. I'm washing these things, scenting them. And I messaged this guy from Europe. I forget his last name, but his first name is Rolf. And he's been keeping snakes a long time. He's a real big breeder over there. And he said, what time are you feeding them? I'm saying usually about 5 or 6. He said, feed them in the dark. And that next day, I fed them in the dark. Every one of them ate. So
really,
all that trouble I was having was just that I wasn't reading the snake right. I'm sitting here trying to get it to do what I want it to do when I want it to do it, when all I really needed to think about was maybe they're not hunting. These snakes are hiding right now. So, you know, you're always learning. But the clutches in the past haven't been that way. But this was the clutch that had the most diamond blood that I've produced. So I kind of contributed to that.
Do you think the diamonds might be harder to get started?
Not after I started feeding them at night. I think they're just different. I think that I would speculate that they just are more nighttime hunters than maybe coastals or jungle that I have in jungle and coastal blood that are in the clutches that I've hatched the seasons prior.
How badly do you want to see these animals in the wild?
How bad do I want to go and see it?
Yeah,
man, it is right up there with getting into heaven. Yeah. But you know, I think that when each year when I don't go, I'm like, all right, well now it's going to give me the opportunity to, you know, maybe get Jeff and Phil. Hell, you're welcome to go, but we just need to have a good group that really embraces all of it, you know, just to maximize the experience.
Yeah. I'd like to make that happen. I really, really want to go see diamonds in the wild. Like that would be incredible.
Oh yeah, I'd like to go to the Blue Mountains. It's a gorgeous area that's got a great diamond population. It's not too far from Sydney. But yeah, that would be the other obstacle is we'd all have to agree where we're going to go. But we know that we've got access to some Australian guys that would give us some great information on how to plan that trip.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny too, talking to Jason Patterson over there in Australia. I said, I was like, God, I want to see these things out in the wild. And he's like, yeah, me too. You know, like even when you're living right there, you know, it's still, I mean, like I'm in Florida and I still haven't seen a Burmese python. You know, I'm born and raised here. So that's going to be happening this year though. And at least making the effort to find some, to go and see them.
That'd be a really cool experience. Yeah, I'd like to do that too.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. Do you do Daytona? Do you ever come out to Florida for Daytona?
I haven't since I've been to Daytona, and that was way back early 2000s. But that is kind of on my to do list too, to just start going to more of these shows that are kind of social events,
Yeah.
and just getting, just enjoying the community.
Yeah, it is such a social thing, right? Like I just went to Tampa Repticon either last weekend or the weekend before, and Ron St. Pierre was there, and I didn't know he was going to be there, and it just made the whole day, made the entire experience, awesome.
Oh, you walk around those shows and you don't even know who you don't know. But yeah, I think it's great that people that have at least decided they're going to get deep into this hobby, like you and I, we should know each other. It'd be a shame if we went to a show and didn't say hi, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And how many times do we know somebody based off of their username or something like that, and you don't really know the individual on the other end of it?
Oh yeah, all the time. But I think again that most reptile keepers have really kept close kind of groups of friends, and that's what I experienced in the early 2000s. Is they the friends I had were just kind of stuck to their group, and it was hard to get in that group. Uh, but now with social media involved, it just seems like it's more of an open and welcoming environment if you just kind of put yourself out there a little bit.
Yeah, that's the big thing, right? Is just reaching out and making that first contact, and then all of a sudden you're surprised. Oh, this person's actually super. They're very affable and welcoming.
Yeah, you got to come in with a presence that you're going to conduct yourself in a responsible way, But I think there's more people than not that would really be open to really giving you as much information as you wanted. Uh,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, no, it's really cool.
So walk me through your enclosures and how you set them up. What are you doing for heating in there? It looks like you have sky hides. Do you leverage sky hides a lot?
So the enclosures that you see with the sky hides, those are my focus cubed enclosures. And I love those. I love that company, Steve and Ashley, just the
Yeah,
best people. And if they could make those products, uh, they just they're going to make that product the very best way they can. And I know that for a fact. They will not skip. They won't leave one I undotted and one T uncrossed. Just really impressive people. I appreciate them so much. But so I don't do much other than just order these and then pay them for them. So as far as putting in hides and things, I'm not that guy. But all of these cages that you see with the hides in them have overhead basking, and I use those flagstones to just kind of absorb that heat a little bit. I think the overhead basking is just ideal for the diamond pythons.
yeah,
They just it feels like the sun to me, like I'm doing something right. With my crosses, I just offer them some belly heat, and then they have an LED light that does produce a little heat in the roof, kind of centered in the roof of the enclosures. And uh, again, my focus, I'm just trying to keep the room cool. And then I've got just a small, well, actually, in every one of those enclosures, the heat source is it's a 12 by 12 piece of heat tape. And it just could not work any better. Uh, Now, I'm really partial to the overhead heating, and that's kind of going to be my transition. But I think these cages that I started out with, which they're bars cages, And I think they were real popular in the day, but they're still around. BARRS. And there's a local vendor in Austin that I would buy these from, and kind of inexpensive, work really well with heat underneath, the way that heat transfers through that plastic. They hold humidity real well, easy to clean. They're super light. Um, and the snakes have just thrived in there.
Nice. Is it important to you to support Texas businesses?
I think it's important to support businesses that I'm fond of, that I feel like
Yeah.
that stand behind their products. But if Steve and Ashley were in California or New York, I'd like them just as much.
Yeah. Yeah, they put out some incredible stuff. And I mean, it seems like there's a lot going on in Texas in the hobby, as far as breeders and all that.
Well, I think Texas people just are animal people,
Yeah.
And it's a pretty easy state to keep animals, and we hope to keep it that way. But I know people move here to do what we're doing to an extent. It's pretty lax laws.
Yeah. Do you keep any venomous, or have you kept venomous in the past?
I don't, and I would never. No, I'm very accident prone. I forget a lot of shit. So yeah, that's probably not for me.
Yeah.
Stay in my lane, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's, God, they're so cool. But yeah, the risk factor is definitely higher.
How about you? Have you got a gumption rattlesnake?
No, you need to be permitted in the state of Florida. You have to rack up. I think it's either 800 or 1,000 hours. With if I wanted to keep a viper, I really like the blue Insularis.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to keep one of those, I'd have to rack up 1,000 hours with vipers.
Wow.
So
I like that. That's good.
Yeah, it's basically never going to happen. I mean, finding somebody close enough to me, and then getting those hours, that would be hard for sure.
Well, if you wanted it to happen, it could, but it may not be top of your priority list. But you'll find that your interests will change, because that's kind of part of the discovery. You're getting into this stuff and really seeing what you gravitate to, and you start to produce, and then you really start going in different directions. Every project that I got going has changed a couple times just because I'm producing stuff I didn't expect.
Yeah. It's, I mean, just from being in the hobby back when I was in it, compared to now, I mean, man, it's so much, there's just such a better exchange of information now. It's so much easier to find and navigate. So yeah, it's been great. I mean, I've been out of it for since 2011. So coming back to it now, it's such a better hobby. It's so much richer.
And you learn some things, and I'm sure it's a development. You really don't know what you don't know. And that's one thing that I like to give a lot of people a lot of grace. Whether you've been in the hobby for a month or 20 years, there's so many levels to this that it's really hard to answer any question without showing how long you've been in this hobby, right? So you get people talking about keeping, and so Keith McPeak is a great example. I strive to see animals through his eyes, because he just has a way of observing behavior that I find very fascinating and also very intelligent. And I think the only reason that he can do that is because he's been doing it so long, and he's probably worked at it. But you have keepers that have kind of just started and got into it, and they're gung ho, and they learn a few things about animals and behavior, and they start to second guess somebody like that. You're like, you really don't have an argument at all. You just need to understand and appreciate what Keith's saying. And in 2 years, you may think about that same situation and go, okay, I get it now. Right?
Yeah.
You just start to unravel the onion.
Yeah, man. If I had a nickel every time I've had that thought of like, oh, now I get it.
Right. So it really makes me want to shut up about talking about, anything that I have accomplished or that I'm doing, because, it's all just kind of anecdotal. I haven't, I feel like the Jaguar gene has a lot of potential, but that's because the Jags I produce don't show any neuro. And
Really?
so here I'm thinking that maybe it's the diamond blood that's just helping kind of compensate for that neurological imbalance. And so I talked to some guys in Australia where they've done more of those crossings, and they're like, no, man, I haven't seen that. So, like, shit, I thought I had something going. But it's fun to kind of live in your own reality, and it's okay. But just we got to understand that there is an element and knowledge in this hobby that some will never achieve. We can only hope to get there.
So your Jags aren't too jaggy?
Man, I've had the jaggiest Jags that I've ever been around.
Really?
Yeah, and I can't say it's due to better keeping, because most people keep just like I do. So I do kind of suspect there's something about the diamond python just being a little better than a normal carpet, in my opinion. And it's not my preference. They just have things other carpets don't. They've got just a little more confidence, curiosity, intelligence. So, but yeah, I've had such good experience with Jags, and that's not my main thing is to produce Jags. But I think if we could ever get that gene to control that behavior, they're such beautiful animals. Just so strikingly different and vibrant, high contrast.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember getting my first jungle and then seeing a picture of a jungle Jag and just thinking like, oh man, I should have went that route, and then finding out about the neuro issues and then being really put off by it, and thinking like, oh, well, I don't want something that's going to, corkscrew and end up upside down when I go to feed it, and so I kind of turn myself off of it in my own mind,
Well, yeah, I was thinking about that beginner that I'm selling him his first snake. And, if I sold him a high neuro Jag, man, he's probably never going to want another snake, because that just kind of hurts your heart to watch that.
Yeah.
But I just have had the opposite of results. So I'm just this year breeding one of the females I produced in the past. So we'll see how she does going through her pregnancy. Knock on wood.
Nice. That's awesome. All right. Well, I really appreciate your time, Tony. We'll wrap it up. Do you have any wild snake stories you want to share from all your experience with the animals over the years?
Oh, nothing comes to mind, but if it does, I'll call you. Maybe I can pop on with something juicy.
All right.
But I do want to thank you for what you're doing. I know you enjoy it, and that's probably why you do it. But we enjoy it because you're good at it. So yeah,
Thanks,
I wish you all the success.
I really appreciate that. It's it means a lot to me. I am doing it because I enjoy it and because I'm selfish and I want to talk to people and chew their ear off and get all the information I can in return. So,
well, you're making some great connections, and good for you. You've just shown a lot of initiative that I think you're going to leave your mark on this hobby in a good way.
Oh man, that's I can't even comprehend those words. Thank you, Tony. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.